Well, we still have two members of the governing body that we want to hear from. But before we do, we would like to give you an update on the project that Audio Video Services is spearheading at the Australasia branch. You'll recall that it was announced at last year's annual meeting. So what has been happening with this video project in this intervening time? Please pay close attention.
At the 2020 annual meeting, we announced an exciting new video project, The Good News According to Jesus. Brother Anthony Morris made the following encouraging statement.
Will there be challenges? Oh yeah, guaranteed. But if Jehovah wants something done, that's what happens.
How true those words have proven to be. Up to date, the largest feature drama Audio Video Services had produced was a little over 100 minutes in length. The Good News According to Jesus spans nearly 1,000 minutes of content. We are happy to update you on this exciting project and share different ways Jehovah has helped us to overcome various challenges.
Well, I have to say personally that I am quite excited. Anytime we get a chance to go behind the scenes of any Watchtower projects, it is always a bit interesting, and so much emphasis has been on the one in New York, the Ramapo project. So to be able to get an inside scoop about another huge project that they're working on is also very exciting. So let's get into it.
Brothers and sisters already serving at the Australasia branch were key to helping us get the facilities ready. How did they handle this special assignment, especially during the pandemic?
We were all very excited, but as the scope of this project became clear, there were times when we wondered how our small publisher base of around 68,000 would be able to fully support this large undertaking.
We're a small department and it's a small branch that we're at, and all of a sudden we had this project highlighted that was 3 times our normal workload.
Right after we received approval for the project, the branch territory experienced terrible bushfires, raging right throughout the country. Straight after this were floods, so many of our brothers experienced double disasters. As we then started to recover from this and build momentum to start the project, the COVID-19 pandemic began.
All the deliveries of construction materials coming into the branch had to be quarantined, all the bulk supplies that the construction department was using. And so that meant there was a time period for those things to be unavailable for use. And then the logistics of once all those bulk supplies came out of quarantine to then move to where they are needed on the site, when new deliveries are coming in, and managing that safely with the COVID-19 risks and the risks of interaction with the delivery drivers and the contractors. It was complicated and very time-consuming for all involved.
We needed help from our brothers and sisters outside of Bethel. So we put the call out and they came from all over the branch territory to help. Many of them travelled days on rough and rugged roads to come and help us. When they arrived, they spent a time in quarantine and then they were able to come and help us safely on site.
There were specific items needed for the project, so we asked the brothers and sisters to help to see where or how we could obtain them. It was so heartwarming to see all the responses flooding in. Within a short amount of time, we had received offers for donations or loans for much of the heavy machinery or large equipment we needed, and even things like plants for landscaping.
So a few things to sort of unpack here. First off, you have the situation where it's like we have fires that were raging throughout the country, and then there was floods, and then the pandemic. Which is no doubt affecting people in really serious, significant ways. And yet, despite dealing with all of this, what happens if you're a Jehovah's Witness? Well, if you happen to be in the construction field, own a construction company or anything, Watchtower is now calling you. They are knocking on your door, asking you, hey, we are trying to move forward with our building projects. And I know we have, the pandemic. I know we had all the fires. I know there's these supply chain shortages that are just terrible. I know there's all this flooding, but you know what? We need you. We need you. it's so crazy that no matter what the circumstances are, Watchtower is always squeezing whatever they can out of ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses. And this happens on so many different levels. If you're just in the congregation, can you increase your time? Can you auxiliary pioneer? Can you regular pioneer? Can you reach out for more privileges? Can you be a ministerial servant? Can you be an elder once you're an elder? Well, can you reach out for circuit work? Can you do more for construction work? Can you do things for the hospital stuff? There's just always, no matter what level in the organization you are, they're always just trying to squeeze as much as they possibly can out of you, despite life-changing circumstances for most people. And then you have this lady that comes on. Shout outs, I guess, to have a woman on camera by herself, because sometimes if it's not an interview, I guess this is kind of an interview, so maybe it doesn't count. But it's usually they have a man on screen with them, and if they're doing an interview, a guy's asking the questions. But anyway, just a small little observation there. What she says there was funny is, well, we called around to the brothers asking them how we could obtain the equipment that we need. Why would you have to call around to various brothers or sisters or whatever, friends, I don't know what word she used, but why would you have to call around to ask? You know how you obtain heavy equipment and materials? You buy it. That's how you obtain it. But no. That's not how it works in Watchtower land. In their land, it's, we asked them, how we can acquire this. We don't know what to do. We've never built anything before. Can you help? And within a short amount of time, they have most of the heavy equipment and materials either on loan or just straight up donated to the organization. And this is so fascinating to me personally because it gives us a little bit of a micro window into the financial situation with the organization. Because I feel one of the most profitable things the Watchtower does is build things. Because of how this is set up, and we'll see how this video progresses, but when you see how much is gifted or loaned for free, and how much of the human labor is just essentially for free. And the camera battery died and I completely got distracted because then I went to the bathroom and grabbed some more water and a few cashews and forgot even what I was talking about. But that's okay because I was probably rambling anyway. With all of that being done and finished, and with one fresh battery now packed into the old Canon 90D. God, that's hard to say. Actually, it's not hard to say. This is scuffed. Let's try again. Actually, whatever.
So we brought in a number of temporary workers and a number of remote workers as well were added to the team. And the branch committee made available a large car parking area so that we could quarantine off all the deliveries and handle those things safely and in line with the guidelines.
So at the beginning of the project, the number was about 200 people in the family, and that quickly grew to around 500. And while we have a beautiful kitchen here to serve food from, it wasn't really designed for 500 meals each day. The branch committee, as well as various departments, although they had a heavy workload themselves, they were able to extend a helping hand where we lost commuters. We gained some workers from various departments who helped us in various tasks within the food service.
So it was clear to everybody in the department and at the branch that it really needed to be a team effort and everybody going above and beyond to make this work. But that only takes you so far. Jehovah's blessing on the arrangements, the qualities that he helps us to show, the motivation that he helps us to have to overcome those challenges and to take on things that really are beyond what we can normally cope with. And seeing that, particularly as we look back on a number of those challenges and how they've been overcome, you see Jehovah's involvement day to day.
Maybe it was just me. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. But what in that segment actually reflected an indication of Jehovah's blessing, his guidance in an arrangement? You're talking about feeding, making food, by people that know how to make food and building a building with people that know how to build a building. I don't, like, if Jeffrey Jackson took a chainsaw and cut his own head off and then, reattached his head back onto his body and kept on giving a talk, like, that would be an indication of Jehovah's blessing or something, right? Like, that would be like, whoa. I mean, maybe that's a really complicated magic trick, but at least it would be something. They're literally talking about, like, my alarm went off. Oh, it's Jehovah's blessing that my alarm went off. No, I set an alarm and it was designed by someone that knew how to make an alarm and went off. Not a big deal. It's so crazy just how mundane their experiences are. It is kind of interesting, though, to keep track of. So we had the heavy machinery that was like donated and stuff before. Now we know that it went from 200 to 500 people. So we can kind of get a idea about the total scale of the project as they're giving us these little bits of information. But let's see where we go.
Our brother had a trailer that was going to be donated to the project, but he didn't have the funds to pay for the freight. At the very same time, a sister contacted the branch and wanted to donate specifically to the project. The amount she donated was the amount that was needed to cover the freight to bring the trailer to Bethel.
I see what they've done here. So, someone wants to donate a trailer. Hey, more donated things. But hey, sorry, he can't cover the amount to just get the trailer to them. Now, what does Watchtower say? Oh, well, we can pay for this. Oh, no. A sister just happened to randomly donate some money, and it was enough to cover. So, basically, they're receiving donations on any given day. And at the time of this project, and they've literally called out to people like, hey, whatever you can give, please provide that. So they've asked witnesses in the region, whatever, is within your means to give. 2 people do that. One person in their means to give is a trailer, but he can't ship it to you. Another is cash. These 2 things aren't related, and yet the way they tell it, with the music and the seriousness of his face, they're absolutely trying to say, oh, look, it's like a blessing from Jehovah. It's so pathetic. These stories are getting so ridiculous. Oh, good stuff.
One brother made a 30-hour round trip to deliver a large quantity of goods he manufactured for us. He made this trip not once or twice, but multiple times, even planning the work around 2 surgeries he had to have. A number of trucks were required to freight the goods, so members of his family and congregation shared in the driving, while local brothers extended hospitality.
Imagine that this scenario was in, just say, like a well-known charity like the Red Cross or something. It's not a discussion about the Red Cross's history or their ethics or anything, but it's well known and it'll get the point across. So imagine someone says, hey, I have a manufacturing company and this is very useful material to you. And the person at the Red Cross is like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, when can we expect that? And the person donating, it's like, well, I have 2 surgeries planned, and it would be a 30-hour drive in order to get it to you. And the person at the Red Cross says, so how long do you think it'll take to get here? It would seem a little bizarre that they wouldn't work with you a little bit more. Like, I would think they're like, oh, thank you for donating these essential materials that we need. We can come pick them up for you because we have it within, we're a giant company and you are a single person. Or we're a giant charity and you are an individual. But no, the burden's on you and your friends and family and your local congregation to get it over here for 30 hours while you're trying to plan your way around surgery. If someone did that and that was the response by the Red Cross, they'd be like, you know what? Forget it. Click. I'm going to go and take my generosity elsewhere. Maybe it's just me and how I'm seeing this, but I think this is a really ridiculous story. And it, again, goes back to the point of Jehovah's Witnesses are just squeezed for everything that they have. Even if you're like in the hospital, you're having to plan multiple surgeries around this 30-hour drive. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm very impressed with the level of appreciation, the sense of gratitude that permeates the family, and seeing that is a real boost for us and a real blessing.
We feel very appreciative for everyone who's been able to help on this project, recognising their personal and collective sacrifices that have been made. But those who have been able to come in and help us on the project tell us how thankful they are to have had a share in the project. Only Jehovah can create a situation like this.
Jehovah always finds a way to help us do His will, often providing solutions we never thought possible. In addition to preparing the Australasia facility for the project, much work has been done with script development, casting, and location scouting. How has this progressed?
We recognize that there would be many needed adjustments to the branch.
You might know him as the man with the longest torso in all of Bethel, but he's in fact the long-lost brother of retired NBA star Detlef Shrimp. Give it up for Jared Gossman!
Many needed adjustments to the branch there as far as facilities is concerned. We knew that there would be the need for many volunteers to be involved in the project, and we knew it was going to be coordinated from halfway around the world.
The challenge with finding locations for the gospel accounts is that they need to look like ancient lands, but be placed in a modern world. They need to have no signs of civilization, and yet be close enough to civilization to support our modern filming operations.
You're asked to flesh out an entire world.
Next up, the man who grew up with far too many Tom Selleck posters in his room. He is the dirtiest, the dastardliest, the dagoest mustache. Because my only connection to this word was from the scene in SNL.
You think you're pretty smart, don't you, Trebek? What with your dago mustache and your greasy hair?
I thought it would be kind of funny to reference this. It wasn't until later that I realized that it was in fact an ethnic slur. So my apologies to go out to anyone that was offended by this, and I want to assure everyone in the community that I am trying to be as aware as humanly possible as to what could potentially offend anyone. So thank you so much for this quick PSA. Now back to the video. In all of Bethel, Brian Jalapeno!
You're asked to flesh out an entire world, a culture, and hundreds, actually thousands of characters that appear in these accounts, to do so with very limited information actually in the Bible. How do we add enough details to connect with the audience, but without overstepping by introducing teachings or ideas that contradict the Bible's message?
So I find this to be particularly interesting, that he's talking about the big scale of this project and trying to convey to his audience that they are keenly interested on sticking to what the Bible says. Obviously, the problem with that is the Bible can be vague and open to interpretation. And when you have people of differing opinions about it, can we really say that, well, we're sticking to what the Bible says, or are we just sticking to what we say the Bible says? Because then it's not that big of an issue. It's not that big of a deal, because you can basically, the Bible becomes a little puppet and it can become whatever you want it to be. So I found that interesting. But then, just to be a little bit nitpicky, the witnesses are happy to ignore things that are just directly in the Bible that you just couldn't, get around. But like I said before, because they have this concept of, well, it's within our right to just change, the meaning or the interpretation or even the words so it fits with the doctrine, the philosophy that we already have. So it's kind of meaningless at that point. But I found that to be particularly interesting, how he's trying to convey this integrity that just isn't there to his audience.
We can truly say it was a worldwide effort on the part of our brothers and sisters. It was especially encouraging to see how young ones responded to this need. They were looking to extend themselves in their service to Jehovah, and they were willing to adjust their secular jobs. They were willing to move to other locations in order to be able to support this project.
We were looking at how we could accomplish so many.
Our next contestant needs no introduction. He is the only man that can stand on the wrong side of a camera while recording a video. Yes, the only thing bigger than his head is his bow tie. Give it up for Sal McGriddle!
Accomplish so many auditions in a shorter period of time. So we came up with the idea of a self-guided audition, where we put a package together identifying how the audition needs to be accomplished, and we send it to the publisher that's being auditioned, and they record their own audition and send it back to us for processing.
While we were at some of the locations, we actually did test filming. We put actors in wardrobe in front of the camera and recreated certain scenes to see how this location could be used for our project. We were able to...
Well, the auditions are probably already closed, but if anyone has a link to where I could send my personal audition, I think we could enter the How to Make a Jehovah's Witness cooking show. You had them in the kitchen. I think my audition might, the governing body might like it. They might like the spunk and pizzazz and flair that we could bring.
That sounds pretty good.
To their otherwise dull and dreary productions. But my goodness, is this a large production? I guess I underestimated it in some ways, but just seeing this, it's like, wow. They are really going all in. I mean, just to get like test footage to test out like their locations and areas, they have like a whole crew of people. It was like 25 people. And I imagine they're driving to various different locations. My goodness, this is going to be a massive undertaking. And I think it's hilarious because why are they doing all of this when their numbers are as they are? I always come back to they're just planning and prepping to become the JW Media Organization. And that's just, they'll be airing their movies or something on TV before we know it, instead of just on the JW Broadcasting. So I guess we'll see where all of this goes.
Travel to more than a dozen locations during a month, and everyone returned happy and healthy.
There's some accounts in the
Back from a recent shopping spree at the Gap and Banana Republic, please give it up for... We're getting word that this competitor is actually sponsored by Philadelphia Cream Cheese. So please spread the word and give it up for Travis Smith.
Gospels that reference large groups, such as the Sermon on the Mount and when Jesus preached from the boat. How would we show that many people? The team took time to test various methods, including some computer graphics, as well as different styles and methods to be used to duplicate people for these large crowds. The production team was able to see what did and did not work, and this is very beneficial because it helps us to plan appropriately for the actual production day.
And so it's simply a matter of going and doing as much research as possible to find out what is known. And of course, there's an entire team devoted to doing research for our publications, and we have access to those brothers and sisters. Something that has been incredibly valuable for every screenwriter on this project is to see members of the teaching committee sit at every table read for each script, and then proceed to give us direction, ask questions, give us direction on what to go and research further, what to remove, and in many cases, what to add. It shows how deeply they're invested in the story of Jesus' life.
So a couple things that caught my attention. First off is the little modern art-looking pillar thing they have in the background of their research room. That little pillar, it says something, he spoke in a vision to his loyal ones. I just thought that's kind of funny to have in your research room because you're essentially like setting people up. Like I guess the idea of art is to either like relax or just spice things up or give you something to like reflect on, or I don't know. But they sit back and reflect on that and they think, yeah, God is speaking to us in a vision and helping us do this research. I just thought it was kind of an interesting little thing they had there. Also, when they are showing their little research group and even the Zoom meeting, you'll notice that there is a sister that is taking part in the research. So I found this to be interesting as well, because a sister can research stuff. She can, put in the actual hard work, but then she can't get up on stage and tell people about her research. So if she blows the case wide open and goes full, what's that little, Enola Holmes, that's the one I recently, but God, Nancy Drew, man, the joke would have landed so much better if I could have just said, went full Nancy Drew.
No.
But now it's lame. So she can go full Nancy Drew style and blow the case wide open. But when it comes to actually like revealing that information to the wider public or audience, the governing body or whoever, one of their helpers, they'll take credit for introducing this new light or for making, this discovery with the Bible, even though she was the one that might have actually done it. So I just found it interesting that they had a sister involved in this, research phase, because I just would think they wouldn't, but because they do, it makes it doubly funny, because if she does do actual research and find something, she has to basically just give that to a man to tell the world. And then I guess the funny part is they're sitting here doing all of this research about, what type of rocks or what shape a building should be, or how the linings of their little robes and how they would have, what materials were used. They go into excruciating detail about all of these almost inconsequential details. But then when it comes to researching the fundamental question, is this true? Does this actually make sense? Is the account in the Bible consistent, or does it seem to be desynced fundamentally in many places? No, don't think about these actual questions worth researching. Let's think about the fringes of their garments and what color they might have been, because that's what the people really need. People certainly don't need to listen to me talking, that's for goddamn sure.
It felt like Jehovah had taken us and placed us into a land thousands of years ago. When we got to these various locations, we literally would jump out of the vehicles and run across the landscape in excitement for how we could potentially use them. One of the biggest challenges we had was getting everyone back into the vehicles so that we could go on to the next location.
So do you guys honestly, hi Zizi, do you guys honestly think that anyone is going to be jumping out of a car, running around, yelling? We're talking about grown adults. We're talking about grown adults here. Like there's like kids at a playground, like they just found out they're going to get a bit of candy or something, and now they're all hyped and excited about it. Like, oh, we get our candy now! Can you believe it? We get our candy now! It's so silly to think that this man is coming on here, like for real, in all seriousness, telling these people, no, we were so happy. We were so ecstatic that when we got to our location, we were running around, screaming and yelling. It's just such a funny mental image, honestly, to like think about. These people just so excited because they get to work on this project about Jesus. I guess the only thing we could really say is Jesus.
We went to one property, and when we talked with the brother, he said, "This isn't my property. This belongs to Jehovah. I'm holding on to it. I'm not sure why, hoping that perhaps Jehovah can use it in some way.
And when you think about all of our brothers and sisters coming together to support this initiative, it really has been a blessing to be able to witness that.
Even the land, the labor, the land, the materials, the machinery, all of this is just free money for Watchtower. If you think about like how nutty it is that like I said earlier, they will squeeze anything they can out of people and take all of the benefits of it. Because no doubt if Watchtower starts declining in their numbers, this is going to be a massive facility that they can sell off and use to fund something else, or just keep themselves in front of a camera on the internet for a bit longer. I mean, from a strategic standpoint, I guess it makes sense. Use the free labor, use the donated materials, use the donated land, and build things that are really valuable assets. That way you can just sell them off one day and the people are like, well, hey, can I get some of my cut back? No sirree, Bob, no cut for you.
It really reminds me of what is said in Psalm 133, verse 1, where it said it would be good to see brothers and sisters dwelling together in unity. And we've seen that goodness. We've seen our brotherhood really rally around supporting this project in so many ways. And it has contributed towards a spirit that has allowed Jehovah to bless the work.
Would you like to see how the design and construction aspects of the work are progressing, including the historical sets?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we've had in the design construction world is to get the mentality that we're designing and building something that needs to look 2,000 years old.
Now, we're used to building modern buildings and we're used to using the materials that we have today, but to now use those to provide something that was ancient, that was going to be quite a challenge.
In Jesus' ministry, he went to numerous different towns, and those towns would have had different looks because of the natural products that were available to the tradesmen then to build those buildings.
Back in ancient Israel, the building materials would have been stone, so they would have used limestone, basalt, field stones, and even clay bricks. There's probably just over 100 doors and gates out there. There's also over 200 windows, and we've got shutters, and all of these need either timber lintels or timber sills.
You have tradesmen that are used to getting things, you could say, nearly perfect. Normally, as a renderer or a plasterer, you would cover up cracks. But here we're having to actually create these. That can be quite a challenge.
Back a few years ago, there were various branches that were put forward as possibilities, as options. And in the end, the Australasia branch was chosen. At the time, in the design construction world, we thought, well, that was an interesting choice. But during 2020, during the pandemic, we found out in retrospect it was one of the only places on Earth where this project could be completed now. Because of the low incidence of COVID in the country, we were able to use outside contractors to come into the project to do part of the site works for us. So it's been a blessing to have the project take place at this location.
Well, my goodness, is this quite the facility that they are building. Just the amount of materials and the cost of this building is really, really nutty. No doubt, but obviously for Watchtower, it's whatever. But it is funny how he mentions this thing about, well, we're so glad that we did it in this location. And it's one of those, no matter where they chose, they would have made a story about how that was a blessing from Jehovah. Like, whenever they do these little pieces on JW Broadcasting, it's everything's a blessing from Jehovah. If there's a hurricane, they find a blessing. If someone gets sick, they find a blessing. If no matter what it is. So it gets kind of entertaining at a certain point because now we just get to see, okay, how many different sort of random little blessings are they going to be able to find in the corners of their building and design meetings and construction. And anyway, I just thought it was funny because it's always a blessing all the time.com.
Those that we had on site here already, they were very open-minded, and they had a lot of creative thinking when it came to building historical sets now with modern materials.
So we have about 7,000 square metres of render to accomplish, and we'll have 2 teams working full-time for several months to accomplish this.
So if you are a construction worker and you are building something for Watchtower, you are allowed to use independent thinking, a little bit of creativity. You can, come up with your own designs and get creative with it. But my, oh my, when that comes to important questions, does that mentality shut down? No tolerance for creativity, no tolerance for independent thinking, no trying to do things in a different way. It's funny that in certain scenarios it's fine, and then in a different scenario, oh, no, end of the world, you're an apostate, and no longer friends, family, goodbye forever.
In this particular type of work, nobody's trade really counted. Everybody had to try, and many of our sisters, in fact, were the ones that had the skills that were needed to create the historical effect that was required.
To achieve the weathering that would happen on the stone, if it sat there for hundreds of years out in the weather, the water would get into the stone and slowly break it down. So then there's going to be areas of the stone that are softer, so they'll wear away quicker. So then that's done with the wire brush. And then some spots with the acetone, it puts little divots into the stone, which occur naturally in limestone. Once the project's completed in the backlot, the brothers and sisters would have applied up to like 4,500 square metres of stone finish to the buildings.
Okay, well, I'm no buildings materials expert or anything, but just using my Wally-style quick math, the internet tells me that it costs $25 to $80 per square foot, depending on thickness and style. So I'm assuming to build like a stone wall anyway. So I'm assuming it's on the high end because of the craftsmanship that he literally just got done describing. So if that's $80, let's just say, and they said 45,000 square feet of finishing stone, then that's like, what, $3.5 million, somewhere in there, of just the stone. Of just that. Like, this project is wild. I had no idea.
It's been amazing to see how, with the variety of backgrounds, despite this, they've been able to achieve quite amazing things. Just their willing spirit, prepared to take on board the instruction, and we can see Jehovah's blessing behind it.
In the temple area in the backlot, there's a little over 4,000 square metres of concrete that has been made to look like stone.
Well, one of the contractors that quoted on the job was actually a brother. And that particular brother said, well, you know what, I can volunteer to do this, and there's enough brothers around that we can bring together, and we would be more than happy to be able to do it on a volunteer basis. So an isolated area was set up where these brothers could test and sample and produce the concrete that was needed for the floor finish of the temple. So over 27 days of straight pours, we had approximately 30 brothers and sisters each day come in and work tirelessly to be able to accomplish this temple floor for us.
27 straight days of pouring the cement. 27 straight days, and 30 to 40 people there every single day. That is crazy how massive this thing is. This whole project is like seriously wacko mode. And especially it's, slightly comical that it's happening in Australia when Australia is one of the countries that is bleeding numbers of witnesses around the world, like more rapidly than other places in America or Europe. So kind of interesting there too as well.
Of the concrete pour, we wanted to surprise the brothers because someone had made a sign saying United in Spirit. But actually, the construction Bethelites surprised us. They all had balloons and signs, and it spelt out thank you. I think that just reflected how we love each other and we'd give our life for each other because we both serve the same God and we love Jehovah.
Through lots of sleepless nights and prayer about it, we ended up finding a brother who owned a sawmill and had property with trees on it, and he willingly chopped down the trees on his property and provided them for us, delivered them to site, and actually donated them to us, and they were exactly what we needed.
We also had specific prayers at certain times about certain matters, and then 30 minutes later we receive answers. That definitely also is no coincidence. And then obviously getting the right approvals at the right time, despite objections. We know that there's no one else other than Jehovah that could have a hand in that. So it's obvious that Satan has put everything he can in front of us, but Jehovah has provided every time at the right time. It's no coincidence that his hand has been on this, and there is no doubt that he wants people to know about his son Jesus.
I always like whenever they indulge in this fantasy of this chess game happening over this construction site where you have Jehovah on one side and Satan on the other, and they're exchanging pieces. Like Satan threw everything he could at the project. Is that the best you got, Satan? Permits? Just having to get some site work done? I don't know, it just seems so funny how they have to take an ordinary thing. Hey, we are building this giant set for our movies. That is as simple as it gets. And yet it has to be this universal issue at stake. It has to be the most important construction work that's ever happened in the history of the world. That's how they see it, because that's how they try and get people excited or stay excited about the organization. People wouldn't stay in it if it was just like, let's sit around and acknowledge all of the things that we've got wrong. They have to keep people interested and excited and engaged. So they make these simple little stories about them building something cool, that's neat, and it becomes the biggest problem between Satan and God, and they're duking it out, but we know God will always prevail.
Seeing the collaboration in our monthly meetings with the entire team, where we have the World Headquarters Legal Department, the World Headquarters Computer Department, we have the Purchasing Department, we have Design Construction, we have the regional video teams, we have audio video services, all of these groups, along with the branch in Australasia, working together for a common goal as a team. It has been amazing and a very faith-strengthening experience.
We were happy to share this update with you. But you might still be wondering, how are actors being prepared to reach our hearts through their performance? How will the tone and filming style be selected to represent the gospel accounts? And maybe the biggest question you have is, when will cameras start rolling? Stay tuned for a future update.
Well, I have to say I am absolutely impressed by the scale that the organization is leveling up their production. It's kind of wacky, but I guess for whatever their end goal is in the future, whatever that looks like, this would be the way to do it. But even more interesting than I thought. So at least this annual meeting hasn't kept us bored completely, unless it's me just running around being silly.